My name is Maya. I'm 31 years old, and I have spent the last 6 years turning sugar and flour into things that make people cry at their own birthday parties. Not the bad kind of crying. The kind where someone bites into a slice of cake and looks up with wet eyes and says, "Who made this?" I built that reputation from scratch. Literally, working doubles at a hotel bakery until I had enough saved to open my own studio. A small space, just me, and one part-time assistant, but it was mine. My name on the door, my recipes on the menu, my calendar booked 3 months out. What I never put on the menu was family discount, which apparently means free. I'm going to tell you what happened when my mother called me the Wednesday before my nephew's christening and said, very calmly, very matter-of-factly, the way you'd tell someone the restaurant changed its hours, "Honey, I think it's better if you just drop everything off and skip the party. Your sister-in-law's people are very traditional. They don't want any drama." I held the phone against my ear for a long moment. Through my studio window, I could see the cooling racks where 3 dozen hand-piped rosette cookies were resting, ivory and blush, each one pressed with a tiny fondant cross. I had been up since 4 that morning. I had a 7-tier dessert tower sitting in my walk-in, a custom christening cake with hand-painted gold lettering, and 48 individual petite fours in a box I'd already tied with satin ribbon. Every single item made by me, paid for by me, designed and baked and decorated across 2 weeks of late nights. They don't want any drama. I said, "Okay, I hear you," and I hung up. My thumb hovered over my mom's contact for about 10 seconds. Then I opened my calendar instead. Let me back up because this didn't start with a phone call. It started the way these things always start, so slowly you don't notice until you're neck deep and the water is rising. My brother got married 4 years ago. I was the maid of honor, which sounds glamorous until you realize in our family that title comes with an unspoken addendum, and you'll handle all the food because you're the one who does that. I spent 3 weeks developing a dessert menu for the reception. My mother called it your contribution, the way people call a covered dish a contribution when they don't want to admit it's actually a full catering line. I didn't charge them. It was a gift. I told myself it was a gift. When my brother's wife got pregnant, there was a baby shower. My mother called. "Maya, you know no one does pastry like you. It would mean so much." I made a tower of French macarons in pink and gold. I made a custom naked cake with dried flowers pressed into the frosting. I arrived early, set everything up, took exactly 1 photo from my portfolio, and watched my sister-in-law's mother accept compliments for the spread without once mentioning my name. When I laughed about it later with my best friend, she gave me a look I didn't know how to read at the time. I know how to read it now. My dad turned 60 that fall. Just a small thing, maybe a couple dozen cupcakes, became a 3-layer fondant cake, a cupcake tower, and a charcuterie board, because my mom mentioned in passing that some of my dad's work friends were coming, and it would be embarrassing if the food wasn't impressive. I drove 40 minutes each way to deliver it. My dad said, "Looks great, honey." My mother told her friends her youngest was so talented and always happy to help. I wasn't always happy to help. I was always afraid of what would happen if I said no. That is the part nobody talks about when they say, you should have just said no from the beginning. Sometimes the cost of no feels higher than the cost of yes. And you keep paying yes until the bill is so enormous, you can't even see the top of it anymore. The christening was my nephew's, my brother's first son. I genuinely wanted to be there. I had been excited about the cake for a month. I sketched 4 different designs before I landed on the one I loved. Ivory fondant with hand-painted watercolor clouds and his name in soft gold script. I tested the recipe twice to get the crumb exactly right. This wasn't obligation baking. This was the first time in years I had actually wanted to make something for my family, and it was the thing they used to push me out the door. Because here is what my mother didn't say on that phone call, but what I pieced together from 3 text messages from my brother over the next hour. My sister-in-law's family, the Harts, did not think I fit the aesthetic of the day. They had seen my Instagram, which I run professionally, and apparently they felt my presence would shift attention away from the baby and toward me, the business owner, as my sister-in-law reportedly called me. in a tone that made it sound like a character flaw. My mother's version, delivered through my brother like a relay race of bad news, was that I was too much, and it was better to just let this one go. Too much. Me. The person who had been making myself small in that family for 6 years. I sat on the stool at my work table and looked at the cake. Then I looked at the dessert tower. Then I looked at the 48 petite fours I had hand-finished with gold luster dust at 11 o'clock the night before. I texted my brother back one line. Did you agree with this decision? The dots appeared and disappeared 4 times before he finally wrote, "It's complicated. The hearts have a certain way of doing things. It's just easier." Easier for who? I typed and hit send before I could soften it. He didn't answer. Here is the thing about being a professional. You do not get emotional in a crisis. You assess, you triage, and you act. I had been in event catering long enough to know that sentiment is expensive and clarity is free. So I took 20 minutes, made a cup of coffee, and let myself feel everything I needed to feel. Then, I put it down, like a knife you finished using, and I got to work. All of the food I had made was purchased with my money, made with my time, and stored in my studio under my name. None of it had been paid for. None of it had even been discussed in terms of payment, because it's a gift, it's a contribution, your family. There was no contract because there was never a contract. There was never a contract because they knew that asking me to sign something would make it feel like a transaction, and making it feel like a transaction would make it harder to ask for the next thing for free. I called my part-time assistant, Danny. Hey, change of plans for Saturday. I need you to come in Friday afternoon. We're repurposing the christening order. She didn't ask questions. That is why I love her. I opened my booking system and looked at my upcoming clients. A regular corporate client, a law firm that ordered from me every quarter for their partner meetings, had an event the following Friday. I had already submitted a quote, but we hadn't finalized the dessert menu. I called the office manager and told her I could upgrade their order at no additional cost if they were willing to add a few specialty items. She said yes before I finished the sentence. The 7-tier dessert tower was redesigned. I swapped the christening-specific details for something more neutral and elegant, added some gold-dipped strawberries, and logged it under the law firm's event file. The custom christening cake, the one with my nephew's name, was the only thing I couldn't redirect. I set it aside and thought about it. Then I called the venue my sister-in-law had booked for the christening luncheon, a private room at a garden restaurant about 20 minutes from my studio. I had been included on the vendor email chain months ago because my mother had casually CC'd me when coordinating delivery logistics. My name was on the delivery confirmation. I called the event coordinator and told her there had been a change with the dessert order, and I would not be dropping off the items I had confirmed previously. She was confused. She said the family had listed my business name on the event sheet as the dessert provider. I know, I said, but the order has been canceled. You'll want to let them know so they can arrange something else. There was a pause. When did this happen? Today, I said. I apologize for the short notice. Then I went to my walk-in, took out every item that had been designated for the christening, and began the process of converting what I could and documenting what I couldn't. I was not going to eat several $100s in ingredients and 2 weeks of early mornings to fund a party I had been told I was too much to attend. I texted my mother that night. Simple, direct, no punctuation drama. I've pulled the food from the christening. The venue has been notified. I hope the hearts enjoy their traditional day. Then I turned my phone face down and got a full night of sleep for the first time in 2 weeks. The next morning, my phone had 19 messages. My mother, what does this mean you pulled the food? Call me right now. My brother, Maya, what is going on? The restaurant called and said, there's no dessert order. My sister-in-law, this is my son's christening. I don't know what your problem is, but this is beyond inappropriate. My mother again, I know you're upset, but this is not the way to handle it. People are counting on this. My brother, do you understand how much this is going to cost us to fix last minute? A custom dessert order 2 days before an event? Who even does this? I read every message. I let myself feel the pull to apologize, to fix it, to call the venue back and say there had been a misunderstanding. I recognized that pull. I had been answering it my entire adult life. I did not answer it. I called my mother back because I wasn't going to do this over text. She picked up on the first ring. Maya, I need you to listen to me. No, I said. I'm going to talk first. She went quiet. I don't think I had ever started a sentence that way with her. I told her that I had spent money I did not get reimbursed for, time that I did not get compensated for, and creative energy that I had never once been properly acknowledged for, on events for this family, going back 4 years. I told her that I had made peace with most of it because I thought it was the price of belonging. I told her that when I got the call saying I was too much for a room I had personally been asked to furnish with something beautiful, I understood, finally and clearly, that I had not been paying the price of belonging. I had been paying the price of being used. We didn't mean it like that, she said. How did you mean it? The hearts are just very... I don't care about the hearts, I said. I care that you called me and told me I wasn't welcome. And in the same breath, you expected me to send the food anyway. You wanted my work in the room. You just didn't want me. She was quiet for a moment. You're being very dramatic. I'm being very clear, I said. Those are different things. She told me I was ruining my nephew's special day. I told her I had made him a cake with his name on it in gold, and if she wanted, she could pick it up from my studio. No charge. But the rest of it wasn't coming. She hung up without saying goodbye. The next call came from my brother that afternoon. He had that particular tone men get when they've been told by someone else to fix a problem, and they don't fully understand it, but they're going to try anyway. Just tell me what it would cost, he said. To put the order back together. I'll pay you. I almost laughed. Not in a mean way, just in the way you laugh when something is so backward it becomes briefly absurd. This isn't about money at this point, I said. I pulled the order because I found out I wasn't invited. Not because I wanted to be paid. Look, I know Mom handled it badly. Did you agree with the decision? Silence. Because I asked you that question yesterday, I said, and you told me it was complicated. I want to know if you think it was right to tell your sister she couldn't come to your son's party after she spent 2 weeks making everything beautiful for it. He exhaled. Maya, the hearts are very connected. They do a lot for us. I didn't want to rock the boat. I know, I said. You wanted me to be the one who stayed quiet, so you didn't have to be. He didn't have an answer for that. I love my nephew, I said. I want a relationship with him, but I'm not going to build it by accepting that I'm good enough to work for this family, but not good enough to sit at the table. If that changes, you know how to find me. I hung up. Here is what I did not do. I did not post about it online. I did not call the hearts. I did not reach out to extended family to explain my side. I just lived my life for the next 2 days, while the christening happened without my desserts, without me, without the cake I had spent a month dreaming up. My assistant Donnie texted me a screenshot Saturday afternoon. It was a Facebook post from one of my mother's friends. Prayers for a beautiful family celebration today. Heard there were some last-minute hiccups with the catering. God bless. The comments were full of question marks and heart emojis, and one person asking if the restaurant had messed up the order. I put my phone down and went back to work. On Monday, I had a message from my sister-in-law. It was long. It started with an accusation, pivoted to an explanation of how stressed she had been, touched briefly on how I had embarrassed her in front of her family by being unprofessional, and ended with the line, I just want you to know the day was ruined because of what you did. I sat with that one for a while. Then I replied, I understand you're upset. For what it's worth, the day wasn't ruined by me. It was complicated by a decision your family and mine made together, when you decided someone who had invested weeks of her time and hundreds of dollars into making your event beautiful wasn't welcome to attend it. I don't think you're a bad person, but I think you got very comfortable with what I was able to provide without ever asking what it was costing me to provide it. I hope the christening was still meaningful. I hope my nephew has a wonderful life, but I'm not available to contribute to events where my presence is unwanted and my work is expected. That's not a relationship. That's an arrangement, and I didn't agree to it. She did not reply. My mother showed up at my studio on Wednesday. I knew she would eventually. She has never been someone who lets conflict sit without trying to smooth it over. which sounds loving until you realize what she means by smooth it over, is usually stop making things difficult for everyone. She came in wearing her good coat, which meant this was a serious visit, and she brought a small box of cookies from a grocery store bakery, which landed as either an olive branch or a deeply unaware choice of gesture. I chose to believe it was an olive branch. I made us both coffee. "I want to talk about this," she said. "Okay," I said. She had clearly rehearsed something, because she started with a summary of how much she valued me and how proud she was, which would have landed better if it had come any other time than directly after a conflict she needed to resolve. I let her finish. "Mom," I said, "when was the last time you told people about my business without also mentioning that I help with family events?" She blinked. "What? When you talk about what I do you talk about the studio, the clients, the corporate accounts, or do you mostly mention that I made the cake for so-and-so's party?" She was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of everything you do." "I believe you," I said. "But I think the version of me you talk about most is the one who shows up and makes things beautiful for other people. And that version doesn't have opinions or needs or feelings. She just produces. I'm not that version anymore. I might have never been that version. I just played along." My mother looked at her coffee cup. I could see her processing it, the way people do when they hear something true that they don't want to be true. Her face did several things at once. "I didn't know you felt that way," she said finally. "I know," I said, "because I didn't tell you. I kept thinking if I did enough, eventually you'd see it on your own. That's not how it works. So what do you want?" "I want you to tell your family friends that I have a business, not a hobby. I want my brother to answer a direct question instead of deflecting. I want to not be excluded from family events and simultaneously expected to supply them. And the next time someone's family decides I'm not the right aesthetic for a room, I want you to say something to them about it, instead of calling me to manage my feelings about being excluded." She was quiet for a long moment. "The hearts are very important to your brother's family." "I know," I said. "I'm your daughter. Where do I rank?" That landed somewhere it needed to land. I watched her face change in a way I had not seen before. Not defensiveness, something softer and slower, something that looked like genuine reckoning. She didn't have an answer for me that day. She left with her grocery store cookies and a promise to talk to my brother. I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't going to hold my breath. 2 weeks later, my brother called. Not to negotiate or manage or relay someone else's position. He called to talk. He asked if I could meet him for coffee. Just us. No agenda. We sat across from each other at a place near my studio. And for the first time, in I don't know how many years, he talked to me like I was a person. He was trying to understand, instead of a resource he was trying to maintain. He said he had watched my sister-in-law's family operate for years and had absorbed their hierarchy without questioning it. That the Harts put enormous stock in appearances, and he had spent so long trying to fit their mold that he had started applying it to his own family without realizing it. He said excluding me had felt, at the time, like a logistics decision. He understood now that it wasn't. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not a we're sorry you felt that way sorry. Actually sorry. You deserved better." I looked at him across the table. My brother, who I had shared a back seat with for 10 years of family road trips, who I had covered for when he snuck out in high school, who I had watched fall in love and become a father and gradually disappear into someone else's definition of success. "Thank you," I said. "That means something. Are we okay?" "We're working on it," I said. "That's more honest than yes," he nodded. "Fair." He paid for the coffee, which was small, but it was something. I did not go to the next family gathering that month. I needed the distance, and I wasn't going to pretend I didn't. But 2 weeks after that, my nephew had his 3-month photos taken, and my brother texted asking if I wanted to come over and see him. Just family, no event, no aesthetic, no hearts, just a baby, on a blanket, being a baby. I went. I held him, and he did the thing babies do, where they look at you like you're the most interesting thing they've ever seen, which is technically true because everything is new to them, but still feels personal. My sister-in-law made an effort. Not a perfect effort, not a comfortable effort, but an effort. She said, awkwardly, over kitchen coffee, that she had looked at my portfolio properly for the first time after everything that happened, and she hadn't understood until then that what I did was genuinely skilled, not just pretty. Coming from her, it was a strange compliment, but I took it as the currency it was meant to be. My mother was there. She had been different with me since our studio conversation. Still my mother, still managing and hovering, and occasionally making statements that required a breath before I responded, but different in the ways that mattered. She had told the Hart grandmother, at some gathering I was not at, that her daughter ran a successful professional studio and had corporate clients who booked her months in advance. I heard this secondhand from my brother, and I almost called her, just to say thank you. I sent a text instead. She sent back a heart. It is not a clean ending. Families don't become clean. They become more honest, or they don't. And the ones that become more honest do it slowly and imperfectly, and with a lot of revisiting old moments that still sting. But I stopped waiting for the version of my family that would naturally recognize what I was worth without me having to ask for it. That version doesn't exist. What exists is the version that can learn, if you make the cost of not learning real enough, that they finally have to look at it. I didn't pull that food to punish my nephew. I pulled it because I had finally done the math that I had been avoiding for 6 years. And the answer was clear. I had been subsidizing a sense of belonging that was never fully offered to me in return. The moment I stopped subsidizing it, everyone had to reckon with what the real structure had been. Some of them didn't like the answer. Some of them surprised me. The law firm partner event went beautifully. The dessert tower looked stunning against their conference center backdrop, and their communications director asked me for a card because her daughter was getting married in the fall. I drove home with an empty van and a confirmed deposit from a new client, and I stopped at a gas station for a large coffee and sat in the parking lot for a few minutes just breathing. I had made a cake with my nephew's name in gold script, and I still had it in my studio. I kept it longer than I should have. Eventually I boxed it up and brought it to my brother's house. No occasion, no ceremony. I set it on the kitchen counter and said, I made this for him. It doesn't expire anything. It's just what I made. My brother looked at it for a long moment. You really are the best at this, he said. I know, I said. I've known for a while. We had cake for dinner, just the 3 of us, and the baby who couldn't eat any of it but looked interested. And it was one of the more honest meals I have ever shared with my family. Not easy, not healed, but real in a way that none of those free catered parties ever were. I have a folder on my desktop now. I named it Business Only. It has my rate sheet, my contract template, my non-negotiable terms. If a family event comes up and someone asks for my work, I send them the rate sheet, not with hostility, with clarity. The people who love me understand. The people who only wanted the free version are figuring out how to adjust. Either way, my name is on the door of my studio. My recipes are on the menu. My calendar is booked, and no one books my work without booking me along with it anymore. I want to ask you something before you go. Have you ever kept a running tab in your head of everything you've given to people who never once asked what it was costing you? The late nights, the things you quietly handled, the ways you made yourself smaller so someone else's moment could be bigger? If you have, I want to know where you drew the line, or if you're still waiting to draw it. Because that line exists, you're allowed to find it. What would you have done if you were me?